San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, no love for Libra on Capitol Hill. Fed Chair Jay Powell says he has, quote, serious concerns about Facebook's proposed cryptocurrency. Plus, you'll hear from the social network's global chief diversity officer. She tells us how they plan to double the number of female employees globally in the next 5 years. And internet for all. Well, it's going to take thousands of satellites to do it. Will the price of global broadband be a polluted night sky? We're going to take a look at an emerging debris problem in space. First to our top story, Facebook's plans to create its own cryptocurrency, Libra, not getting much love from U.S. lawmakers, in fact, getting skewered. And you can now add Fed Chair Jerome Powell to that list. Take a listen to what he told the House Financial Services Committee earlier.
While the project's sponsors hold out the possibility of public benefits, including improved financial access for consumers, Libra raises many serious concerns regarding privacy, money laundering, consumer protection, and financial stability. These are concerns that should be thoroughly and publicly addressed before proceeding. Facebook has a couple billion plus users, so you have, I think, for the first time, the possibility of a very broad adoption. And if there were problems there associated with money laundering, terrorist financing, any of the things that we're all focused on, including the company, they would immediately, they would arise to systemically important levels just because of the mere size of the Facebook network. I just think it cannot go forward without there being broad satisfaction with the way the company has addressed money laundering, all of those things. There are a number of concerns that I listed at the beginning: data protection, consumer privacy, all of those things will need to be addressed very thoroughly and carefully, and again, in a deliberate process that will not be a sprint to implementation.
All right, I want to bring in Joe Wiesenthal, co-host of Bloomberg's What'd You Miss, and Bloomberg Business Week's Max Chafkin for reaction. So, Max, it seemed like every other lawmaker had a question about Libra, and then obviously we heard there what Jay Powell said. Why the skepticism?
Well, I think the skepticism gets to the sort of general skepticism about crypto, and you kind of heard Jay Powell's 2 cents on that, plus the fact that Facebook just has so much power. And that's something that, we've all sort of been reckoning with over the last, basically couple of years, where they have this huge user base. They're able to push people into new products. And you could imagine if they aggressively tried to push people into this cryptocurrency, that could create a whole bunch of issues.
Joe, Powell is talking about Libra potentially posing a real threat to the global financial system, and at the scale of Facebook's size, any problems would be magnified. Is he right to be concerned?
Listening to Chairman Powell there, I was really struck by what I think is very clear is this is something that's on his mind a lot. I mean, as you mentioned, a lot of the lawmakers asking him about it. And I think in the past, when it came to cryptocurrencies or blockchain or other endeavors like this, you got the impression that they're like, no, this is something that we're watching. I think this is a little bit more than that. This is very serious concerns. Obviously, a lot of effort on the part of the Fed to really understand what they're doing and seeing if it passes muster. And I think there are reasons for them to be legitimately concerned beyond the sort of systemic nature of this. It does raise questions of, if this is going to be a much more efficient way to transfer money from person A to person B anywhere around the world, how can you really do that and also remain consistent with banking and payments regulations in all these countries? And I think there's pretty legitimate reasons to want to take a go-slow approach to make sure that this isn't just some sort of regulatory arbitrage to get around the existing rules of payments.
Now, even though Jay Powell and the Feds are taking their time in examining Facebook's plans and cryptocurrency in general, it seems like not all lawmakers understood exactly what they were talking about, exactly what they were asking about. This was a exchange between Congressman David Scott and the Fed chair. Take a listen.
This Libra business is really disturbing. I think we all know Libra is the London Interbank Offered Rate. Very critical. It is apparent that Libra is going to leave us or be removed. The potential ramifications of the end of Libra as Libra's schedule end nears.
I think you said it very well. This is I think there are 300 trillion plus in contracts referencing LIBOR in 5 different currencies.
So, well, it looks like Congressman Scott laughing there at himself a little bit, getting Libra and LIBOR confused. But Max, I mean, can we trust that lawmakers understand what they're supposed to be regulating here?
I mean, this kind of came up during Mark Zuckerberg's testimony, where you had these kind of super cuts of, we may have even shown some of them of sort of silly or kind of out of left field questions, and I think that's Facebook is going to try to use that and sort of say, well, DC doesn't know what they're doing. On the other hand, like the fact that people are confused by this stuff and yet it does affect potentially billions of people suggests that we all should be educating ourselves more closely.
Joe, I have to know what your reaction to that moment was.
Well, it was a funny moment, and the question about LIBOR and the replacement is interesting. But I have a lot of sympathy for the politicians, especially on this topic, because think about it. Like, how many people have you and I interviewed who are in tech, or maybe even would describe themselves in blockchain or in crypto or in Bitcoin, that can't really articulate what makes the technology compelling? And it should be worrisome, and I do think it is a case for slowing down again, that if these tech companies think that they're going to reinvent the financial system while lawmakers are still struggling to wrap their head around what it is, that these kinds of exchanges say, like, slow down.
So, Joe, speaking of regulating, who actually does have the authority to regulate cryptocurrency, to regulate what Facebook is at least trying to do here and launch this thing in the next year? Is it the Fed? And it's obviously certainly not only U.S. regulators that will be concerned.
Well, I think, there's still it's a real morass in terms of crypto regulation in the U.S. The Fed is definitely going to have a role in this, because Libra will interface with the banking system, because unlike most cryptocurrencies, there is going to be fiat money or low-yielding government bonds held in regulated financial institutions that back Libra. So there's no doubt that the Fed will have a role. But to your point, if it's going to be a global currency, they're going to have to, at some level, have to deal with regulators in every country in which they want to operate, which is why I think part of the appeal may be regulatory arbitrage. If they were just going to set up banks in all these countries, that would be a major headache. And you have to wonder if the crypto approach is sort of a shortcut around that. And if so, it's a pretty good reason for people to be concerned.
So, what's interesting, Max, is that Jay Powell talked about how the Fed and Fed representatives have met with folks from Facebook before this announcement happened. And now that Facebook has unveiled these plans and the reaction has been what it is, you wonder, did Facebook miscalculate what the reaction would be? They've been in the middle of a firestorm, Max, since 2016.
Right.
A huge public firestorm, and now they're putting another target on their back.
So it's an excellent question, which is like, did they think that this would distract, maybe distract us from the other conversation about whether Facebook is having an improper role in elections or what have you? I think it's sort of a very interesting and maybe sort of bold public relations move, in the sense that you'd sort of expect Facebook, as you say, to go into a cave and sort of spend a lot of time saying, we don't have that much power, don't worry about us. And instead, they've gone completely in the other direction. People were worried about this imperial company that was acting like a country, and here it is saying, we have a bank, we want to have a bank, we potentially want to have the de facto currency of the world, which is very bold, and maybe they don't expect it to entirely work. On the other hand, we're not talking about Facebook and disinformation right now. We're talking about these very far off, very ambitious ideas, which I think is something that Mark Zuckerberg probably is happy about.
Certainly a different narrative, though not always in Facebook's favor. Max Chafkin, Joe Wiesenthal for Bloomberg. Thank you both. We'll continue talking about this. Now, sticking with Facebook, Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent Kevin Cirilli spoke with Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio and Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey to hear about why they're working on bipartisan legislation to regulate digital currencies.
Well, the Token Taxonomy Act is something that we started working on. It's a nonpartisan bill that provides regulatory clarity. And what went over well with some of my Democratic colleagues is they finally found a Republican that's for regulating something, right? And the reality is the companies that are leaving the United States of America aren't leaving to avoid regulations. They're leaving to find legislative certainty. And that's a big part of why Facebook's launching Libra in Switzerland.
So what specifically would this legislation do?
And this point that the Congressman is making, which I think is very important, is about the certainty, right? I mean, I think the key is, when we've heard from a lot of businesses that have come into, a lot of startups who are in our offices saying, hey, I'm going to other countries, like Facebook, going to Switzerland, going to other places because we don't know who our regulator is. We don't actually know how this is going to roll out, what's going to happen down the road. And we can't, it's very hard, as you know, to make a business decision if you have no certainty, no regulatory certainty. So they're actually coming and saying, can you please actually tell us the rules of the road here? Who do we actually have to get our direction from, so we understand the framework for how we operate? And that's where the Token Taxonomy Act comes from. And and really, it's a great bipartisan effort. All this is about is making sure that American businesses can be successful here, that we can have growth here in this sector that's burgeoning. We've always done incredibly well in the tech sector. There's no reason why we're not now.
I think one of the other big things is if Congress fails to act, the reality is the best way to protect consumers is to close the information gap. Fraudsters love big gaps in information. It's an asymmetry, so they understand it. People get that it's kind of hot. And consumers are often the victims of fraud here. So we need legislative certainty if we're going to protect consumers. We need legislative certainty if we want to protect the investment in the United States, and frankly, even the innovators. So it's something that, with Libra launching, it's finally got work that we've been doing for close to 2 years now up to the radar. Oh, that's why it's such a big deal. And so hopefully this hearing will push the momentum to get the certainty that the market needs.
So what specifically would the bill do for a company like Facebook that's launching Libra?
Well, so what we go through, besides making through clear definitions of actually what counts in this space, what falls under it, but it then says, okay, who do you have to work with here? So the FTC, the CFTC, making clear those are places that are actually going to have oversight and responsibility and actually help develop the rules of the road. I'm sort of a person who believes that we should get rid of unnecessary regulation. There's no reason to have out-of-date regulation in the books, and there's a lot of it going back. These are only places where you're looking at, you've got old rules that don't make any sense for the new world, the new economy, and that's what we're all focused on, is how do we actually make sure that we have a new framework where people can operate and keep the jobs and growth here. We've led the world in the apps economy in the United States. My fear is, and you see this actually with Facebook, is that other companies are saying, well, since we don't know here, we're going to have to know what the rules of the road are here, we're going to go elsewhere where we have that certainty, and we're losing jobs, we're losing investment, losing businesses, and we both agree that's nothing, we just can't afford to have that.
So it sounds like there's from the market perspective, as both of you are alluding to, that there's a bit of a regulatory turf war going on in terms of the tech sector, in terms of the private sector, and that this bill would help alleviate it.
Absolutely. So the SEC's issued a number of pieces that are guidance, but they're not clear rules. And frankly, they're not binding. So investors and companies that are launching startups don't have certainty that even something that isn't initially deemed as security won't eventually be deemed as security. And the SEC has been resistant to putting that certainty out there to the point where they tell literally every company, come check with us. Well, you can't company by company come check with you and then somebody changed and now you get a different thing. You don't need a patchwork of legal decisions. You need to know if you meet this criteria, you're not a security. You might be a commodity, you might be a good or a service, and tokens can represent all those things.
Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio and Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey there with our own Kevin Cirilli. Coming up, our exclusive interview with the Atlassian CEO, Mike Cannon-Brookes, as he discusses how the company has disrupted the deal space. This is Bloomberg. Top media, tech, and business moguls have converged in scenic Idaho for a meeting of the minds at the annual Allen & Co. conference. Bloomberg's Ed Hammond is standing by with the CEO of a company that's become an acquisition machine. Ed, take it away.
Thank you so much, Emily. That's right. I'm here with Mike Cannon-Brookes, co-CEO of Atlassian. Mike, it's your first Sun Valley conference. What are your impressions so far?
Oh, mate, look, it's pretty amazing. It's like walking around inside the business books I grew up reading as a kid in university. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a starstruck atmosphere. I have to remember that we have a real place here and try to do some real work. But it's a pretty incredible crowd they have.
Who's the most interesting person you've spoken to?
I can't really drop names, but let me say I've been tempted to ask for my first or second selfie ever, but I have not done so yet.
You guys put out something recently that caused a lot of stir, this M&A term sheet you call the M&A process inefficient, broken, etc. How did that go down with your bankers?
Oh, look, I think fine. Nobody disagreed with our statements about the M&A process. They might have disagreed with our way of attempting to improve it or solve it. But generally, it's been pretty well. I think it's probably the legal firms that like it less than the bankers.
And you, as part of it, you put out this term sheet that sort of anyone, it's free to use, right? Anyone can essentially use it and apply it. Has there been any uptake as far as you know so far?
Not as far as we know so far. But look, we've done 20 plus deals. We're very experienced at doing this. We have put down a set of terms that we think are very reasonable, fair to both sides, and if anything, a little bit buyer unfriendly, prospect friendly. Which is the way we think they should land. The problem with the process is you end up both kind of almost hating each other by the end of this bludgeoning lawyers back and forth. Right. And then you got to work together, and it's just this negative environment created. So we thought, look, can we shortcut a lot of that? Which is very similar to you've seen in early stage financing, seed stage docs, convertible notes, Series A notes around the world. People have open source documentation to just make that process easier. And if you say using this standard doc, people are comfortable with knowing what that means.
Well, let's talk about that, because VC is another area, particularly in tech companies like Atlassian, where you seemingly you have to get that stamp of approval. You yourselves took some money back in 2010 that you didn't necessarily need, but you needed it because you needed essentially the community to give you guys the thumbs up. Should the same thing happen there, where the VCs, there's sort of a model that is more friendly to the companies and gives VCs less power?
Look, it's confusing from a VC perspective, because obviously for them that's an exit event, so they're trying to maximize the speed with which they get their money and how much money they give. They're not necessarily incentivized at that point to be entrepreneur friendly. It's sort of the end of their journey with the company. I think they should see it as these entrepreneurs have built something great, continuing that process on and having it find a good home. The economics of it's not in the term sheet. Obviously, people are going to pay what they're going to pay. But I think they should look upon it favorably. It makes their world easier and more frictionless.
And what do you get by not being based in Silicon Valley? Because you're one of the biggest tech companies, I guess, that is not only not based there, but also you as the CEO, co-CEO, neither of you are there.
Yeah, look, I think we're part of a bigger trend. If you Shopify from Canada, Spotify from Sweden, there's a series of tech companies now that are growing up outside the Valley. Look, I think we've always benefited from having, we would say, 1 foot inside the Valley and 1 foot outside, right? The Valley is amazing with its creativity, change the world optimism and the things, but it does have this frothy, smoke and mirrors world, and it's very insular, it talks to each other. Having a foot outside gives us a very practical customer outlook, right? Sydney's a big city. It has real customers. We have a big office in Amsterdam, same in Europe, with real problems to go solve. And I think having both camps in balance in the organization has actually always been a strength for us.
Just last question, you famously don't have a sales force. The product is sort of, comes word of mouth and organically. At this point, being the size you are now, would it not make sense to sort of add the sales force in?
We do have a sales force. It is bigger now than it's ever been, but it's orders of magnitude smaller than companies of our equivalent size. Our goal is to make our sales process efficient and effective for us and for the customer at every point on their journey. So we do have a sales force for growing larger customers, but our customer acquisition cost at every stage along our curve remains very, very low and competitive. You see that in our economics.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Emily, back to you in San Francisco.
All right, Ed Hanneman, looking forward to more from you from Sun Valley. Coming up, Uber is betting big on driverless cars, but CEO Dara Khosrowshahi says robots won't completely replace humans. He'll tell us his view of the future of autonomous driving next. This is Bloomberg. Just ahead of going public in May, Uber announced it was spinning off its self-driving car unit, Uber ATG, into its own corporate entity. This after receiving a $1 billion investment from SoftBank, Toyota, and Japanese auto parts maker Denso in a deal that valued the unit at $7.25 billion. But just how long will it be until Uber's ride-hailing service is completely autonomous? Bloomberg's David Rubenstein sat down with Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi to discuss.
no drivers. I think it'll be 15 plus years. I think it'll take a long time. So I think there's this drama around robots replacing humans, and I think the reality of life is that the better thing that humans alone and robots alone are robots and humans working together. Okay, and so robots are very well designed for replacing repetitive, predictable behaviors. Most of driving is not either repetitive or predictable, but there's a subset of routes that are. So what you'll see with our driverless program is that, one, we're going to be incredibly careful and we're going to make sure that safety absolutely comes first. But we are building our driverless program, and by the way, we're working with third parties as well, within a context of a network where, for example, in DC, our data scientists know what are the 1% easiest trips in DC. And an easy trip in DC may be avoid a roundabout, avoid an unprotected left turn, stay away, let's say, from the airports, stay on areas that are very, very well mapped. There are a set of routes that are incredibly easy to drive. And what you'll see with us, as far as our driverless program is, we will get the machines to do the simple stuff, and then we will have the humans do the difficult stuff. And the two are going to coexist for 10, 15 years for a long period of time versus kind of the, let's say, the drama that the press reports.
Your 15-year answer was intended to mean no drivers at all, but you expect to have some driverless or autonomous vehicles in a year or two or three or four?
I think within the next 5 years, you're going to see some driverless vehicles out in the markets. And again, I think it's going to be in a very, very limited way.
Now, you spun off your autonomous or driverless part of your company to a separate company. Why did you do that?
We created a separate company that where we were able to bring in some investors and some partners. Toyota, who is, as you know, a huge OEM, and we have a terrific partnership with Toyota. Denso, which is a Toyota company as well, that is very strong in manufacturing kits and sensors and other parts of the car. And really bringing in Toyota and Denso was about building these autonomous vehicles at scale at scale in very, very large numbers. And then we also brought in Masa and SoftBank as a financial partner as well.
Bloomberg's David Rubenstein there with Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi. You can catch the full peer-to-peer conversation tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, and tomorrow, 7 p.m. in London. Coming up, Facebook has ambitious plans to improve diversity, but are they realistic? Facebook's global chief diversity officer tells us how the company is planning to boost the numbers next. This is Bloomberg. Facebook has set big goals to boost workforce diversity. In its annual diversity report, the social media company announcing plans to double the number of female employees globally over the next 5 years, as well as the number of Black and Hispanic employees in the United States. The company also said it wants half of its U.S. workforce to be from underrepresented groups by 2024. I sat down with Facebook's global chief diversity officer, Maxine Williams, and asked why they're setting these goals now.
There's been research done by very credible institutions to say that having goals is one of the ways in which you drive change. The Kapor Center, in conjunction with Ford Foundation, has done a lot of work, the biggest study on why people leave technology. And they've seen that having goals makes a difference. It's one of the 5 things you should be doing. And we want to do what is best practice. We've been building for the last 6 years the machinery, the muscle, the strategies, testing things. Some things have worked, some things have not. And we feel we're in a place now that we have that muscle to really put these goals on top of it and boost even further.
But you're looking to change absolute numbers. You're looking to get to 50-50 globally when it comes to men and women. Do you have some secret innovative plan that we don't know about that's going to make this happen in 5 years?
I wish. Then I would market that and never work again. No, we don't have a secret plan. None of this is some sort of magic thing. This is like hard work, consistent attention, every day being deliberate. Inequity did not come about through some sort of organic weird thing. It was designed. So we are hoping that if we could also design deliberate interventions. It's getting better at what we now know after 5 or 6 years of trials does work. Getting better at that with these goals, we hope will then It's going to be hard. Let me just be clear. Those goals are stretch goals. So I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination, as I said, oh, we're going to hit that. No, but everywhere in the business, we set 50-50 goals. 50% chance we'll hit, 50% chance we will not. And we're going to push on this to get as far as we can to that 50.
Now, Facebook's numbers, to be fair, are fairly average compared to the tech industry. And I get asked a lot, even with Sheryl Sandberg's leadership, who is a leader on women's issues in the world, why can't even Facebook do better? Why hasn't even Facebook done better?
Yeah, I think it's about, there are a couple of things. One is that there's a lot of stuff that we do own, and we have doubled down to try to address that. Things like, is there bias in the workplace, right? How do you evaluate people? Is there fairness there? How are you considering promotions? All of that we are working on and we own.
And you say that there is bias, there is unfairness.
Everywhere. Everywhere. And what you need to do, this is why I say humility is important for every company, for every group of people, to recognize that we're not special. There is no fairy dust that we sprinkle on people when they walk through the doors at Facebook. They are those same people that they are when they got up that morning and got ready in their communities, right? Everybody has bias. So you address that. But on the other hand, having a leader who does model it helps us tremendously. So that seeing that you could, there's this expression, you can't be what you don't see. And seeing a woman who represents what we hope for, which is leadership and influence and success, has been useful. And that's why we have seen our women in leadership numbers have been the most improved of all.
Now, you also report the number of women and minorities in technical roles, because those are important prime decision-making roles, decisions about the product that is used by 2 billion plus people around the world who come from all backgrounds. Now, if you look at those numbers, women hold only 23% of those prime technical roles, blacks and Hispanics 5%. Could another goal be getting to 50-50 in those roles someday?
So this is where, remember when I said there's stuff we control and there's stuff we don't control, right? We are 100% focused on what is our environment, what are the opportunities, how we train, how we're looking. We've expanded the number of internships by many factors in order to get more in. But when you are pushing against a situation where only 18% of the people graduating with computer science degrees in the United States are women, how do you get to 50?
So that sounds like pipeline problem, which many people would like to say is a myth. There isn't just a pipeline.
There isn't, and that's why I start by saying there's stuff we own. And we need to make sure we deal with the stuff we own. Are we being fair in promotions? Are we creating opportunities? Are we weeding out bias? All of that. But when you say, can you get to 50%? So we've increased from 15% 5 years ago to 23% women in technical roles. We have surpassed what would be an obvious market availability number of 18% graduation rates. How much more can you do, right? So I'm just going against could you get to 50? And I'm saying to get to 50, we need to have a lot of comprehensive work, and we do some of that work investing in the long term as well, to get more people from underrepresented backgrounds doing technical subjects, studying computer science and computer engineering, data structures, algorithms. And so we work with universities, we build tools so that people can put in their something called tech prep. You can put in your zip code and see where you can get training in your neighborhood, right? I think it's like all systems go to get us to that 50.
Now, I've made the argument that privacy, digital privacy, is a women's issue. It's not a women's only issue, but it's an issue like healthcare that women have a unique view on. And if you look at the studies, women are more likely to keep their profiles private, perceive more risk online than men. And it's pretty obvious that most of the product decisions at Facebook for many, many years were made by mostly men. Do you think that Facebook would have issues around privacy in particular, so many issues, if there had been more women at the table from the beginning?
I think you don't know what you don't know. So always, our key thing is having more diverse perspectives, having more cognitive diversity on every team is going to produce better results. And we have seen examples already, now that we are increasing the diversity of our workforce, of how decisions are changing and how products are improving because we have those different people there. So I'm going to say baseline, yes, everything is going to be better if we have more diversity.
We interviewed a former Facebook employee last year who said, African American, said Facebook has a black people problem. And it doesn't just affect black employees, it affects black users. The NAACP last year called for a boycott of Facebook when they learned that, when it was discovered that Russians used Facebook to target African Americans specifically in the 2016 elections. What's your response to that?
My response is that there will be a distribution of experiences and of responses to everything. My response is also that in people issues, there's always going to be a complexity, which what is required of you as a company is to look at them head on and to constantly be trying to improve, to take responsibility for the things that you can change. There are many people who would stand up and say, I have an amazing experience at Facebook. That doesn't mean that the person who says they didn't was wrong. It means that there is a range. And when I say that what I think we're responsible for is to getting to consistent execution, to have the best we can get, I think that's what we need to deliver.
And will you admit that this impacts the product? This impacts the decisions that are made?
The level of diversity?
Who's making
Absolutely. That's why we're doing this. We're not doing this for some beauty competition on how many numbers we have versus somebody else. What would be the point of that? No, we're doing it because it absolutely impacts every decision. The research is that when you are trying to solve complex decisions, the more diversity you have, the better solutions you will develop. Everything we do is complex if you think of the scale we operate at and the meaning it has in people's lives to connect to other human beings that matter to them. And we want that experience to be as good as it can be.
Now, this goal, though, it's really exciting. It does put another target on Facebook's back in the middle of, just today, the Fed chair criticizing Libra, lawmakers skewering your cryptocurrency plans. You've got fake news, misinformation issues, hate speech. You're dealing with a pending fine from the FTC, a pending potential antitrust investigation. Why put another target on Facebook's back when, like you said, 50-50 you succeed, 50-50 you don't?
Because I want to succeed. I don't know that you achieve much if you risk nothing. And if there is criticism to come, then I'll be proud to take that criticism if it was in the interest of us getting to the excellence we want.
Facebook's Global Chief Diversity Officer, Maxine Williams there. Well, the U.S. has opened a trade probe into the French tax plan to impose taxes on tech companies. It gives U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer up to a year to examine whether the plan would hurt U.S. tech firms and suggest remedies. The so-called 301 investigation is the same tool President Trump used to impose tariffs on Chinese goods because of the country's alleged theft of intellectual property. Coming up, we head back to Sun Valley. We'll speak to the CEO of Nextdoor, Sarah Frier, what she has to say about taking over as CEO in December after being the CFO of Square. That's next. This is Bloomberg. All right, let's get back to Sun Valley, Idaho, where the annual Allen & Company conference is happening. Bloomberg's Paul Sweeney standing by with a special guest. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Emily. Great to talk to you. So, interesting, Sarah Frier, we're so excited to have you here. Sarah is the Chief Executive Officer of Nextdoor.com. Nextdoor is a really cool local advertising medium. Tell us about Nextdoor, what it is, and maybe what's unique about it relative to maybe other social networks like Facebook.
Sure. So Nextdoor, we are all about local. We're founded on trust, so it is your neighbors. We have verified that those are the people living around you. From there, we want to be able to do three things. We want to keep you informed about what's going on in your neighborhood. We want to help you get connected. Remember, most people don't know their neighbors, so it's a huge problem that we're trying to solve. And the third is help you get things done. Everything from help me find a babysitter, help me find the best plumber, help me find a great event to go to this weekend. We're there to make sure that anything you want to do in a hyper-local fashion gets done on Nextdoor.
Okay, how big is Nextdoor in terms of members or cities or neighborhoods?
Sure, so today we're about 240,000 neighborhoods across 10 countries. So the great thing I see with Nextdoor is there's not a community in the world that doesn't want to create stronger, safer communities. So today we are in the US, but we also resonate very well in countries like the UK, the Netherlands, Australia, other European countries. But frankly, the world's our oyster, right? You can go anywhere. North Korea, I mean, you name it, there still will be a mom maybe looking to find other moms. You might find a senior that's lonely that wants to meet other seniors. Everybody's tap or faucet breaks down at some point in life. They need the plumber. So we view it as a really open-ended opportunity.
So on the business side, your company recently had a capital raise of about $123 million, and nice valuation, $2.1 billion. Talk to us about that raise and kind of what the use of proceeds are for.
Absolutely. So we were delighted with that fundraise. It was one of the first things I wanted to do coming in as a new CEO, is always just to make sure that you have the right balance sheet to do everything else that you want to get done. The round itself, as you noted, $2.1 billion, $123 million raised. A very nice mixture of new investors coming in. So Riverwood Capital led it. but also current investors, so folks like Benchmark Capital and Kleiner Perkins. In terms of what we want to do with it, really three things. The first is to continue to drive growth. So we continue to have global aspirations. So this helps us go country by country. Second area is engagement. So once we have neighbors on the platform, how do we keep creating more utility? The way you do that is you hire more engineers, they build more great products, and they cost a lot of money to go out and hire. And the third area that we are digging into is this power of local business. So also one of my passions in life, clearly coming from where I was before, is what can you do to help local businesses thrive? And we know that when they thrive, communities thrive. And so we're putting a big push into how do we bring local small businesses onto the platform too.
One of the big issues I think that's getting probably more play over the last several years, particularly for social media platforms, has been privacy.
Yeah.
So for Nextdoor, I know there's been some issues about, you know, what information is shared between neighbors. Is there some profiling going on in neighborhoods? How do you deal with the content that goes on your platform?
Sure. So it's a great question, and I think it is absolutely something we as platforms have to make sure we're being very proactive about. I started by saying we're founded on trust. So we actually do a lot to verify that you live in that house, in that neighborhood. I would call it almost a very friction-full onboarding process. I'm very un-Silicon Valley. Because of that, it's not a bot. It's not a made-up person. It truly is your neighbor. Second thing that we do is that once you're on the platform, it is your name and your address that's seen. So it never makes everyone their best selves. Clearly, when people are passionate about particular topics, that can get contentious sometimes. But by having your name there, we think it makes you your better self. And then I think the third piece where you were going with things like racial profiling, we use a lot of design, and we've worked with a lot of academics over time to really help, as people make a post, help them really get into, you know, the front part of their brain where they're truly thinking. And we spend a lot of time talking about kindness, that ultimately kind posts, kindness in your neighborhood, that's what builds social capital.
Great. Sarah, thank you so much. Sarah Fryer, Chief Executive Officer for Nextdoor.com. Back to you, Emily.
Thank you.
All right. Our own Paul Sweeney there in Sun Valley. Thanks, Paul. Still ahead, a sky full of satellites. Companies already filling our orbit up with them. Plans to launch thousands more to bring the internet to everyone. But how will they clean up after them? That is next. This is Bloomberg. You'd think in today's day and age, everyone would be online, but that's just not the case. According to the United Nations, nearly 4 billion people worldwide lack reliable internet access. And companies like Amazon and SpaceX are trying to change that by launching thousands of low-orbiting satellites to try and get everyone online. But as astronomers see it, it's not all clear skies.
Starlight, star bright. Wait, is that even a star I see tonight? High over the Netherlands in late May, objects in a train-like formation trail across the night sky. Not stars, not planes, but satellites. You can expect more scenes like this one, which had skywatchers head-scratching, as the satellite race heats up with many more launches on the horizon. Elon Musk's Starlink program plans to propel nearly 12,000 satellites into orbit. Jeff Bezos' Project Kuiper has asked the FCC to approve roughly 3,200. And private company OneWeb has said it wants to launch 30 satellites a month by December. The goal for most of these devices to bring broadband access to the roughly 4 billion people on Earth who don't yet have it.
I think you can see going forward that access to broadband is going to be very close to being a fundamental human need.
While that goal may seem noble, these satellites are designed to fly lower, leaving astronomers concerned they'll interfere with the observation of distant galaxies. And then there's the cost. The first OneWeb satellites cost nearly $1 million each to produce. It cost as much as $16.5 million just for SpaceX to launch 60 satellites into orbit. Still, investors are rocketing forward. $1.7 billion was invested into space companies in the first quarter of this year alone, according to the VC firm Space Angels. That's nearly double the amount deployed a quarter earlier. So with these satellites, the space economy, so to speak, appears ready for takeoff.
Let's continue our look now at how these new waves of satellites can bring the entire world online with one of the companies you just heard about. Adrian Steckel is the CEO of OneWeb, a satellite company that has raised nearly $3.5 billion to date. It's backed by SoftBank, Airbus, Richard Branson's Virgin Group. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. So if indeed you believe that internet access is a fundamental human right, given the scale and the pace at which you and other companies are operating, when do you think that could be a reality, internet for all, thanks to satellites?
Well, we're launching satellites starting in December, 30 satellites a month, 34 per month, sometimes 36. We'll have our first phase of our system giving global coverage by the third quarter of 2021, and we'll be giving service in some places in 2020. Our promise is low latency service and global coverage. And one of the things that happens right now with satellite is that people get really clunky service because of the high latency. It's just physics, right? The GEO satellites are 36,000 kilometers away. Ours are 1,200 kilometers. And everybody in the world deserves to have the best internet service, whether you're in the middle of Africa, Asia, Latin America, or in the heartland of the United States.
So what about the cost? It's been difficult to calculate the cost of the SpaceX satellite launches, for example. How much does it cost now to launch a single satellite, and how much will that cost come down in the future?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's been very exciting recently is the launch costs have come way down. And so we locked in our 22 launches. We did that a couple years ago. And we know that from then to now, the launch costs have come down about 30%. The rockets are getting bigger. And that means that they can carry more satellites. They're more secure. So we're looking at that trend to continue. And that enables a lot more satellites to be launched. Also, you're seeing CubeSats go up. Ours are not CubeSats. Ours are the size of fridges, so about 150 kilograms. The SpaceX ones are about 220. And people very much focus on a satellite, but a satellite is not a unit of measure. It's like a base station. It could be bigger or smaller with more or less capabilities. But in your segment, you talked about us bringing down the satellite cost to $1 million per satellite. You got to remember that it used to be that satellites would cost about $150 to $200 million and be these big things. And so what we've done is we've taken advantage of all the advances in electronics from the smartphones in miniaturization, and we've applied an industrial approach, which is say we're doing this on an assembly line. That our factory is opening in Cape Canaveral on July 22nd, and so that coming down to $1 million per satellite is a big, big deal.
Now, I was on holiday last week, stargazing with my kids, and we saw what we thought was a shooting star, but then decided it was too slow to be a shooting star, but too fast to be a plane, and that it was probably a satellite. Meantime, Elon Musk has tweeted these thousands of satellites that are already in orbit. People see them approximately 0% of the time. That said, what about the concerns from astronomers about space pollution? Is that going to be a real problem?
I think there's a general concern, and it's real, about pollution in general in space. I think that the most important thing is collisions and being responsible with space. I think one aspect is the visibility. Our satellites that are a higher altitude, where they're at 1,200 kilometers versus their satellites are at 550, so ours are not visible. And then the other thing that you really have to pay attention to, that we're working with governments and we're very much thought leaders on this, is making sure that the satellites disintegrate when they come back into the atmosphere, and so that you don't harm anybody. And then if you and I get into a collision on the street with our car, we walk away from that. If you get into, two satellites collide up there, they'll fragment, and then they sort of pollute the area. So really very, very important to be responsible up there in space.
You're in this race with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who are nothing if not ambitious. What do you have on them?
Well, listen, we're going to be first. We're going to be first with global coverage. And the technology between the companies, like in anything in telecom, will tend to average out. There'll be solutions. Somebody will have a little bit of an advantage for a while versus somebody else. First mover advantage means we're working on getting our clients, our distribution. My sense is that Amazon will take a slower approach. SpaceX and Elon are clearly very aggressive folks, but we're charging ahead and feeling very, very confident about what we're doing.
All right, a different view there of the modern space race. OneWeb CEO Adrian Steckel, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. We are live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out there at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.